Good afternoon, Minister.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, I believe, Mr. Slaw, I see on my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you hear me? Okay, good. I was having a hard time unmuting myself, but we are good to go. I'm just going to wait one more minute here. I see 3:59 p.m. on my clock here. I know, Minister, it's probably just about dinner time or just past dinner time on your end.
It's 6:59.
Okay,
In
well,
Ottawa, we still have a bit of a light, but it's very cold today. So I don't really want to know how hot it is in Vancouver, in Richmond.
well, I'm not going to rub it in like I did yesterday when we spoke, but if it makes you feel any better, it has been raining at my house since before I woke up this morning. So
Well, sorry
uh,
about that.
it's been pretty miserable, but my garden's happy. It hasn't rained here like
There you
this
go.
in months, so I'm not going to complain. We'll just wait another second here. I see the participants now that we're at 4 o'clock. They're quickly building. We're over 30. We had close to 70 registrations for this function. So we're just about halfway. So I'll just wait a few more minutes here to let these other folks join us.
Perfect.
And I know everybody else is muted on the call, but hello, and I do look forward to taking some questions from the group later on. I see Victor, you're not muted, so one of the few. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for your support today.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having us on this call. Good afternoon, Minister. Great to meet you.
Me too. I'm really glad we get to see each other this afternoon.
Absolutely.
So, Minister, for the sake of time, I'm going to jump into it here. I see our chair, Mr. Fan Chun, just joined us. So now that Fan's here, we can officially start the meeting. Hey, Fan. So let's get going. We're going to have another probably 20, 30, 40 people jump in here, but we're going to get going to make the most of this precious time we have with you, Minister. So first off, of course, thank you. We know how busy you are. It's unprecedented times. We really appreciate you taking 60 minutes to join the members of the Richmond Chamber here today. So, Minister, we know you're not only the Minister of Middle Class Prosperity, but also the Associate Minister of Finance, both two areas that are top of minds for all Canadians right now with no shortage of challenges. So we commend you for the major task at hand. Here at the Richmond Chamber of Commerce, we're well aware of the major impacts that this pandemic is having on our members. Business shutdowns and layoffs are becoming more and more common here in Richmond, just like in the rest of the country. We're doing everything we can here to support our members, but of course the challenges in front of us are immense. But we do recognize and thank the Government of Canada for the swift response that we've seen to date and the financial supports that have been announced for business. We're working very closely with your staff and many federal bureaucrats, finding out the details to these programs and pumping out that information to our members on a regular and as frequent basis as we possibly can. And of course, meetings like this give a great opportunity for those members to ask those specific questions as they relate to their business. So more to come on that later in this meeting. Before I introduce our sponsor from the Port of Vancouver, who will officially introduce the minister today, just going to go over kind of some ground rules and protocol for today. So as you all know, you've automatically been muted, but later on in the call, you'll have the ability to unmute, and we hope to take questions from you. Ideally, and our preference will be for you to submit questions via the chat function at the bottom of your screen. So if you scroll down to the bottom of Zoom, for those of you who haven't used this platform, although I suspect most of you are probably experts by now, pull out the chat window and send a question. And we have, I think the entire Chamber staff team is on this call, and they'll be working with me to collect those questions, maybe get rid of any duplicates and send them to me so I can ask them to the minister. And we are going to cover as much ground as we possibly can before we hit 5 p.m. So again, I'll just ask everyone, you are automatically muted. You can unmute, but I ask that you don't, just so we have crisp, clear communication for everyone on the call today. And of course, as always, and I know I don't have to mention this, but I will, but keep the language and the tone very positive, but I've never seen otherwise from Chamber members, so I have no doubt this will be a great, respectful, proactive dialogue. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the sponsor of today's virtual event, the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, that is responsible for the stewardship of the Port of Vancouver, Canada's largest port. Representing the port today is Victor Pang, their Chief Financial Officer. Appointed in 2016, Victor has overall responsibility for finance, accounting, legal, and information technology for the Port of Vancouver. And my favorite part of his bio, Victor is also a director on the board of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And I know he knows our chamber and the chamber movement very well, so couldn't be a better man to join us here today. So I'll hand it over to you, Victor, for some remarks and to formally introduce the minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And you know, I grew up in Richmond, so this place is near and dear to my heart, and I'm really appreciative of everything that Richmond Chamber is doing for the community. So thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. Too bad I do not get to see all of you face to face, but it's my pleasure to be here today. And you know, as Matt said, this is truly a unprecedented time for Canada. So first of all, I just wish all of you and your family to be doing well from a safety and health standpoint. And second, to Minister Fortier, I mean, you know, I want to thank you for everything that your government and your leadership and how you're helping Canada to combat the crisis. You know, we're witnessing a lot of great work from a response standpoint. The case numbers in Canada and BC are looking encouraging, and we're not out of it yet. But you know, definitely, I think we're doing well as a country, and the economic response plan contains a lot of much needed packages to help Canadian businesses and families. So thank you for everything, and I will introduce the minister more formally in a quick minute. But if I could just spend a few moments to share with everybody, just as an example of another organization, how is the Port Authority dealing with the pandemic? You know, many of you do probably rely on import and export, and I'm happy to report that the port is currently operating very much in business as usual kind of fashion. Of course, you know, we have implemented some additional health and safety kind of measures. Some sectors are down in Q1, but our supply chain is working well, and that is, you know, with a lot of hard work by the whole supply chain, the trucking sector, the shipping sector, the rail companies, and the terminal operators, and the labor unions. So we're very, very appreciative of that. It's really important because, you know, Canada, more than ever, I think, needs the supply chain to work to get critical goods like medical supplies to the right places. And also really appreciate the federal government deeming the port as an essential service. So thank you for that. But like many other businesses, you know, we probably look at the same question, which is, you know, is this the time for us to look at some of our capital investment and be slowing it down or canceling some of it to preserve cash? And from that standpoint, you know, as a Port Authority, we're pretty lucky to have a pretty strong balance sheet. And we have decided that this is not the time for us to be cutting investment to save cash, because a lot of the investments that we make, and they're mostly in infrastructure, do drive the Canadian economy. And we believe that we want to be part of the solution to help Canada out of any economic recovery that we need to be thinking about in the post-COVID-19 world. So we'll continue to be making the right investment at the right time to be, you know, based on what we believe the market demand to be. And coincidentally, one of our largest planned investment is the Roberts Bank Terminal 2 project in Delta. And we just reached an important milestone. And this is an important project that is going to be supporting the needed capacity for container. So we reached the milestone, and want everybody to know that we'll continue to invest in these kind of a projects. And that's a big project that's going to be driving many jobs, 12,000 long-term jobs. And we'll continue to have that as part of our investment plan. And the Richmond Chamber has been a strong supporter of that project, and I want to thank you for your continued support of that. So with that as background, I want to, you know, now just formally start my introduction of the Honorable Minister Mona Fortier, Minister of Middle Class Prosperity and Associate Minister of Finance. Minister was elected in 2017, and she is the first female member of the Parliament for Ottawa and Vanier. That's fantastic. Congrats on that. And in her work, the minister is focused on making life more affordable for Canadians, protecting the environment, and helping businesses prosper. And in her role at Finance Canada, she has been very focused on small and medium-sized businesses. Before her being elected, Minister Fortier worked as a Chief Director of Communications and Market Development at Collège La Cité and managed her own strategic communications consulting firm. Very impressive resume, and Minister, your portfolio is critical to Canadians now. So I'm sure all of us, just like me, we're highly interested in what you have to share today. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Minister Fortier.
Bonsoir, or good afternoon, everyone. Merci de m'avoir invité aujourd'hui. Thank you for the invitation to speak with you today and have this really important conversation. And I want to thank Victor for that introduction. Thank you. It's always nice to hear that we all work really hard in our different communities. And I also want to recognize Matt and the Richmond Chamber of Commerce for hosting this important town hall. It is very important for me and to our entire government that we listen to businesses and Canadians across the country and answer your questions. Before I begin, though, I want to acknowledge the tragic events in Nova Scotia earlier this week. While that may seem far away from Richmond, I believe we are all connected, and I know Canadians are mourning coast to coast to coast. And my heart goes out to the friends and families of victims at this time. Je suis certaine que vous conviendrez tous que nous nous trouvons dans une période de crise sans précédent. Nous luttons contre les impacts sanitaires, sociaux, économiques de la pandémie de la COVID-19. Nous, au gouvernement, nous sommes très conscients que les entreprises canadiennes et les travailleurs souffrent depuis le début de cette période difficile. We know that due to the severe impacts of this pandemic, businesses need help to keep more workers employed so that Canadians don't have to choose between keeping food on the table or paying their bills. Our government's approach to respond to this unprecedented crisis was based on 3 steps. First, we are ensuring that the health and safety of Canadians is at the heart of everything we do. Secondly, we are working to ensure everyone is protected and nobody falls through the cracks of our safety net. We have introduced measures to address the needs of vulnerable Canadians, from students to low-income essential workers. And third, we are putting in place emergency economic measures to address the real needs of business owners, non-for-profits, charities, and workers across the country. And we are working to find solutions for all Canadians. That means taking a made in Canada approach in our procurement efforts, as well as in our ways of planning for recovery. And we are rethinking the ways our country and the world do business. Over the last few weeks, we have announced a series of broad economy-wide supports as part of Canada's COVID-19 economic response plan. These historic measures have been designed, developed, delivered directly to Canadians in record time. I want to recognize the hard work of the public servants who have been working 24/7 to make this possible. Through this plan, we're providing more than $100 billion in direct support, $85 billion in liquidity support through income tax, GST, and customs duty payment deferrals, and over $570 billion in additional credit and liquidity support. The new Canada Emergency Response Benefit, we all call it the CERB now, provides $2,000 every month for up to 16 weeks to workers who have stopped working as a result of the pandemic. Over 8.38 million Canadians have already received their benefit, totaling over $19.8 billion that have been distributed. And last week, the Prime Minister announced additional eligibility for the benefit. Individuals can now earn up to $1,000 per month while collecting the CERB. We also extended the benefit to seasonal workers who have exhausted their EI regular benefits and cannot undertake their usual seasonal work as a result of COVID-19, as well as to workers who have recently exhausted their EI regular benefits and are unable to find a job or return to work because of the pandemic. We value those frontline workers who have kept our country going through this crisis, from those working in our hospitals to those stocking up our grocery shelves. This is why we are working with provinces and territories to cost share a temporary top-up to the salaries of low-income essential workers that the provinces and territory have deemed essential in the fight against COVID. The Government of Canada will cover a significant portion of that cost, including in British Columbia and in Quebec, where provincial governments have already implemented direct wage supports for low-income workers in the essential service sectors. De plus, pour aider les entreprises à conserver leurs employés ou à les réembaucher et pour les aider à se préparer à la reprise, nous avons également introduit la subvention salariale pour les entreprises admissibles. We want employers to be able to keep their doors open and their employees working. This is why we have made available the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy at a rate of 75% of the first $58,700 normally earned by employees. This represents a benefit of up to $847 per week for the 12-week period from March 15th to June 6, 2020. This emergency subsidy will help prevent job losses and encourage employers to rehire workers previously laid off as a result of COVID. It is available to employers who have suffered a drop in gross revenues of at least 15% in March and 30% in April and May. Employers of all sizes and across all sectors of the economy, from small and medium-sized businesses to charities and not-for-profits, with the exception of public sector entities, are now eligible for this. Bakeries, movie theaters, hardware stores, you name it, if they have been significantly impacted by COVID, they are eligible. 2 weeks ago, I was in the House of Commons for a historic bill. This piece of legislation has passed through the House of Commons and Senate and quickly received royal assent. This will enable employers to retain employees who are still on the payroll and to rehire workers previously laid off, which in turn is guaranteeing families across Canada a steady income. By being able to hold on to their employees, Canadian companies will be in a better position to bounce back quickly after the crisis. We also have introduced a new Canada Emergency Business Account, which we call CEBA. This program provides support to eligible financial institutions so they can provide interest-free, partially forgivable loans of up to $40,000 to small businesses, including not-for-profits. The program will be accessible to businesses that paid between $20,000 and $1.5 million in total payroll in 2019. Financial institutions have already approved more than 313,000 loans, and close to $9 billion in credit are already in the hands of small and medium businesses already. These loans are fully funded by the Government of Canada and administered by EDC, Export Development Canada, with financial institutions. They will ensure that small businesses and not-for-profits have access to the capital they need at a 0% interest rate to pay for rent and other important costs over the next number of months. Yesterday, the Canada Revenue Agency launched an online wage subsidy calculator to guide employers through a step-by-step calculation of the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy and enable them to determine the subsidy amount they can expect to claim based on the information that they enter in the calculator. And just earlier today, the Prime Minister announced a comprehensive package of measures that will help Canadian students and recent graduates get through these difficult economic times and position them for the future success. These measures include the Canada Student Emergency Benefit, the Canada Student Service Grant, enhanced student assistance for the fall school year, and expanded youth employment and job skills programming. We also announced $75.2 million to provide additional distinctions-based support to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis post-secondary students. Nous avons dit que nous ferons tout ce qu'il faut pour protéger la santé et la sécurité des Canadiens stabiliser l'économie et atténuer l'impact économique de la pandémie. Et c'est ce que nous faisons. In this unprecedented time, we will continue to carefully monitor all developments related to COVID-19 and work hard to ensure businesses get the support they need. As a former business owner, I know how difficult it is to brace for this type of challenge. The measures the government is putting in place are meant to help as many Canadians as possible and as quickly as possible. The type of conversation we are having today is part of the process to answer the needs of businesses. Your ideas and questions are valuable. They help us mold our approach, make our programs more flexible, and we will continue to do that. We all know that life during the pandemic continues to evolve. The immediate needs of Canadians are our priority. So I want to thank you so much for your time and all of the hard work you are doing in your community. These are difficult times, but we can and we will get through it. And to do that, we need to do it together and to work together. Alors, thank you very much for listening to me. Merci beaucoup. And I'd be ready to answer your questions.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. Some pretty big numbers. I mean, 300,000 loans issued plus in the last few weeks here, 9 billion credit. Just speaks to the magnitude of this issue. But I commend government and of course you and your policymaker colleagues, but also the bureaucrats and the staff that we're talking to on a very regular basis. We know how hard they're working behind the scenes to deliver these amazingly huge programs that we know in normal times usually take years to develop, and they're being implemented in weeks here. So yeah, we thank you for the speed that you're working to support Canadian businesses. So we've got a few questions that have come in, and we've got some prepared questions that were sent to us in advance by members. So I'm going to start with a few questions that were emailed by attendees leading up to this, and I've also got a running list here of folks who have been submitting questions via the chat feature. So keep those questions coming via chat. Thank you. And to get things going, the first question I received from a member was, if the non-essential service orders last longer, will there be an increase in the available funds under CEBA, the Canada Emergency Bank Account?
Well, thank you for that question. And the reality is that no one knows what the full economic impacts of COVID-19 will be. And as I mentioned, our government's priority is to make sure that businesses and Canadians have the help they need to get through this challenging time and support a strong recovery. Now, currently, businesses are able to apply for CEBA until the end of June 2020. And the government is actively monitoring and collecting feedback on CEBA and continuing to work closely with financial institutions, the major banks, and many credit unions who have received the fact that they can offer the CEBA, and we will continue to work with stakeholders to support the ongoing needs of Canadians. As part of this process, on April 16th, we announced the expansion of the eligibility requirements to include payroll range between 20,000 to 1.5 million. I don't know if you recall, but it used to be 50,000 to $1 million. So by getting feedback across the country, we understood we needed to be more flexible. And that's why today it's between 20,000 and 1.5 million. And we will continue to listen to businesses and take action as necessary. And our message is clear. We will have your back.
No, I appreciate it, Minister. And I've seen that firsthand. I take part in a federal call every morning. And a big part of that call is identifying what's working and what's not working. And I'm always impressed when I hear, when there's a common thread of something that's not working, quite frequently within days, we've seen it tweaked and adjusted, just like that change you mentioned with the 50,000 to 25. So you appreciate the responsiveness. I've got two other questions related to CEBA, and they're both kind of related to folks who have kind of been falling through the cracks. One is independent contractors. We had a member reach out. They've been in business for 11 years. They operate a tutoring business, and their tutors are self-employed independent contractors. And under the current framework, they do not qualify for CEBA support. So they are wondering if anything is being discussed for businesses who operate with independent contractors as opposed to employees.
Well, thank you for that. And businesses that are ineligible for CEBA may be able to access other support programs such as the CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, which is available to self-employed individuals who have stopped working and who expect to earn less than $1,000 per month during a certain benefit period. And this benefit provides $2,000, as I said earlier, every 4 weeks for up to 16 weeks to workers who lose their income as the result of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, your member may also be eligible for other credit support programs, such as funding supported through the EDC BCAP guarantee and the BCAP co-lending facility, which represents up to $12.5 million in new loans. And this can be accessed through their existing financial institution. Now, depending on the nature of the business in question, further supports are also available, including through the regional development agencies. And there might be an option there to help your member.
Sorry, I was unmuted by accident there. Now I'm back. Thank you very much for that, Minister. One other area that is raised, and I hadn't sent this question, but it came in this morning. Another area that I've been told is falling through the cracks is franchise owners. Many individuals who own multiple franchises, they operate it through one central entity as far as payroll and some other administration aspects. And because how these franchise operations are structured, they're also not able to receive some of these supports. So I'm sure the answer is similar to in regards to independent contractors, but I just wanted to flag that for you and let you know that franchise owners of multiple locations also pose some challenges with the way they're commonly structured.
And thank you for raising that. And if you also send examples of what works, what doesn't work, it helps us to do that kind of analysis to see what else we could do or where else we could guide the business or again, the person that is looking for support.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now I'm going to switch here. And if it's okay with you, I'll just go back and forth with some of the questions that we received in advance and some that I'm getting here because there's more and more coming in. So here's one from a member that's at the time the federal government is trying to keep as much liquidity in the economy as possible. We have heard reports of government agencies putting a freeze on the processing of new hire paperwork. In one instance, we heard a UBC grad student will likely not be able to participate in their federally funded co-op program, putting them a step behind after graduation. Can you tell us if there are currently hiring freezes in place in any governmental departments? And do you know how many new hires are currently being delayed? So I'm sorry it was a long question, but as it relates, I guess, so we're hearing of hiring freezes within federal government departments.
I thank you for that question. I would have to go and get you a better response because I don't have the specifics of what is today. I know that we've been really trying to hire new people to help where we need essential services such as the Canada Revenue Agency, Service Canada. I know there are some openings, but I'm not sure about the freeze. So if you wouldn't mind, I would love to take that back and find the answer and then share it with your members.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. We'll make sure we send it over to your staff. Another one here that we received in advance, many small business owners are not eligible for the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy as they pay themselves through dividends. Is the government considering changing this?
So thank you for that question. And currently, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy will support businesses that are the hardest hit by the pandemic and help protect the jobs that Canadians depend on. Employers of all sizes, as I mentioned, and across all sectors may qualify for this subsidy, which will provide up to $847 per employee per week, so we can keep people on the payroll. Eligible remuneration includes amounts paid to an employee as salary wages, and other taxable benefits, fees, and commissions. Dividends at this time is not considered, and we're still looking at it. But at the same time, we need to recognize that certain sectors of our economy and their workers may not qualify for existing measures such as SEBA or the SUS, like you're saying, the wage subsidy. And in recognition of the very real challenges these businesses are facing, we have taken additional action to provide relief to innovators and young entrepreneurs by providing $250 million to assist innovative early stage companies that are unable to access COVID-19 business support. And this is through the National Research Council of Canada's Industrial Research Assistance Program. So that's one option. The other one is the young entrepreneurs. There's $20.1 million in support for Futurepreneur Canada to continue to support young entrepreneurs across the country who are facing challenges. Now, the funding will allow Futurepreneur Canada to provide payment relief for its clients for up to 12 months. And another one would be businesses in rural communities, $287 million to support rural businesses and communities, including providing them with much needed access to capital through Community Futures Network. And we also announced last week organizations in the cultural, heritage, and sports sector, $500 million to establish the COVID Emergency Support Fund for cultural, heritage, and sport organizations. And this will help address financial needs for affected organizations within these sectors and to continue to support artists and athletes. And this is, again, a measure it's consistent with the government's other existing support measures for wages and fixed costs for organizations. So that's some other ways that there might be support for businesses who can't have access to the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy.
Oh, thank you very much, Minister. Now I'm going to go back to another question. This one's from Rob Baxter, who's on the call with us here today. And his question is, can we expect a plan or guidelines from the federal government for how to reopen the economy that each province can adopt depending on their particular situation? Or are the provinces going to be left to their own to develop their own individual plans? If the feds are going to provide an overall framework, when can we expect a plan from the federal government?
Well, thank you for that very important question. And I would tell you that at this time, we are not putting much energy on recovery or on a plan, because as you know, for the past 5 weeks, we've been really focusing on the emergency response. I believe that in the next days and few weeks, we will be starting at looking at how we will work with provinces, territories, even municipalities, to look at how we should address recovery. You know, we still also, as the public health officer, Dr. Tam has mentioned, we will need a vaccine at some time. So we will also have to think how we have a recovery before the vaccine and then recovery post-vaccine. So all those questions and even the assumptions we're starting to look at, but we don't have a specific plan right now that I could say tonight, here's what we're going to do. We're still going to monitor. We're still going to make sure that we respond to the emergency crisis we're in now. And then, of course, continue the conversations with businesses, with stakeholders, provinces, territories, to have a plan that we can all work together on, because we all know that we will need to go to recovery at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you more and more as a community and as a chamber, you know, we're focusing on recovery, but you just, unfortunately, at this point, we're still taking it day by day. I'm sure as many of our members will have seen, you know, we had our largest increase in cases since March reported today. So you think it's better, and then you're hitting these road bumps. So it's a challenge.
And it's important to say that we were in very strong position as a country economically before the COVID crisis. So we had a very good foundation. We will have to rely on that foundation that we had to create and to make sure we plan the recovery. So I really want to reinstate the fact that your ideas are most welcome, but at this time we're still responding to the emergency measures.
Absolutely. No, we recognize that. And on that theme of response to the critical crisis so many businesses face. One of the biggest challenges we're hearing from members is commercial rent relief. May 1st is right around the corner. April 1st is a tough day for a lot of businesses, and those that made it through April 1st, they're now changing their focus to May 1st. I'm sorry, you might hear little people screaming behind me.
I love it.
So we recognize and thank the government for an announcement, the recent announcement regarding rent relief, but we're still waiting on some details and what that means and who's eligible. So wondering if at this point you're able to explain in any more detail how these commercial rent relief measures will work for our members and all business for that matter.
So as for now, we do recognize and we know that many businesses are not only worried, but they're petrified with being able to pay rent in May and even after. And landlords across the country have stepped up to the plate, offering some relief to their tenants and helping them go through this challenging time. And our government want to commend their leadership. But in recognition of the challenges facing Canadian businesses and property owners, our government intends to introduce the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance, or CECRA, for small businesses. And this program will seek to provide loans and or forgivable loans to commercial property owners who provide businesses with rent reductions in April, May, and June. And to do this, we do require with provincial and territorial governments, so who govern owner-tenant relationship, and we hope to have more to say soon. We've been really working hard with the province of British Columbia, and I'm hopeful that we will get very soon an understanding on how we will be able to move forward with the CECRA program.
No, thank you. And I know we're waiting for that day. As soon as we see the info from your colleagues, we'll be sending it out to our members, because as we get closer to May 1st, we know people are getting more and more anxious on that front.
But I really think, if you don't mind, I really want to recognize how we have been really working together, collaborating with the provincial government, the BC provincial government. I mean, we're all hands on deck together, and the collaboration has been immense. And we know we might have some final things to do to get it there, but I can tell you it's very positive because we want this to work. So I just want to at least mention to everyone that the collaboration with provinces and territories has been really, really important.
No, absolutely. And that is a perfect transition to the next question I have from Lauren on our call. And it's something that many of us are paying attention to, because we've made so much progress in the last 10 years in particularly, but even more so in public transit in British Columbia, and especially in the Lower Mainland by TransLink. And they just had some really shocking news with some of the layoffs that were going to be required this week, the amount of money that they're losing day after day. And of course, we recognize this is a provincial authority, but I imagine that transit authorities across Canada are facing these similar challenges. So the question from Lauren today, are the feds going to support organizations like TransLink with some emergency funding as well?
Well, thank you for that important question. And we do recognize, and we have heard about that reality in many of our communities across the country. Many municipalities have also raised that question, and we're trying to see how we can support municipalities and transit across the country. We don't have a concrete solution right now, but we are considering different options, and I'm hopeful we will have some good news very soon.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Now I have another question that we received in advance of this meeting, and this is an issue affecting many of our members. Richmond, as home to the international airport, we have a lot of travel agents, a lot of hotels, a lot of restaurants, and one of the big issues specifically facing our travel agents here in Richmond is they're providing a lot of refunds. There's a lot of money going out. Everyone's canceling their trips or their plans. They've got no revenue coming in. They've got less and less staff trying to process these huge amounts of refunds. So they're facing huge negative impacts at the moment, including cash flow and transaction fees. So the question is the government considering support for service providers that are being forced right now to provide all these refunds and transaction fees based on these refunds?
I want to reinforce again how we want to really support small and medium business size businesses during this unprecedented time of crisis, and it's an integral part of our emergency economic plan. And these businesses, we know, are the backbone of our economy, and they give our communities their character. They provide good jobs that support families across the country. Now, in addition to our government's direct support measures, we have heard from many Canadian businesses and entrepreneurs that they need help with cash flow and paying their operating costs, such as rent and utilities. And small business owners can apply for support from the Canada Emergency Business Account through their banks and credit unions, as I said earlier. And businesses should access the CEBA account through their primary lender, where they have a pre-existing relationship. Businesses that are impacted can contact them by phone or email to find out about their application process. And eligible small businesses and nonprofit organization could get, as I said earlier, the interest-free loans of up to $40,000. And furthermore, these businesses may have access to other measures put forward by the government, including wage subsidy or more time to pay income taxes. Now, we understand there are some realities that we might not have addressed yet. And again, I will repeat the fact that as we receive those examples, it's really all hands on deck. We look at it and we see if we can provide more assistance. And I understand that those realities are coming in, and we will continue to look at what we can do to support businesses and nonprofit organizations.
Well, thank you. And just for my members' sake, if I could double down on that, is, I really have seen the responsiveness from your government, and, I'm encouraging as many members as possible, send us the stories, send us those gray areas you find yourself in, and we are passing those directly on to Ottawa, and they've been great at getting responses back to these individual cases, but we're also seeing those taken away and policies tweaked accordingly. So I can vouch for that, Minister. I'm seeing it firsthand. And to the 50 or so members on the call, do send us those issues as they unfortunately arise in your business, and we will pass them on your behalf. And it's a win-win for you and for government to see where these gray spots are.
And as you will see, we will continue to be finding flexible ways, because our objective is to support businesses. And as you saw in the past weeks, we announced something, and then a week later, we kind of extended eligibility because we found out about those cases that we had received. We will continue to work and to listen to Canadians to see how we can adapt those programs, emergency programs we've put forth, to make sure that they can help Canadians across and workers across the country.
Perfect. We'll keep those emails coming to help you. Now, the next one comes from another caller. Today we have Brett Manuel, and I believe Brett says that you guys met, I believe, at an Ottawa town hall.
Yes.
So Brett is wondering if you can tell us more about what your government is doing for people with disabilities during this COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, thank you for raising that. And you probably know Minister Qualtrough very well. And she has set a committee to make sure to understand the realities of people with disabilities, because we need to really provide more support for them. And as we go, we're trying to make sure that we respond to that. Today, we did mention during the announcements for students that we would increase benefits for students that have disabilities. So we're already looking at how we can better provide services and better provide support for people with disabilities. I understand also that we have invested in many nonprofit organizations to help in providing those services on the ground, helping with the food banks, helping with driving some people to sometimes some of their clinic appointments, and also trying to look at what else we can do to support caregivers that are also providing some support to people with disabilities. So it is on our radar. Minister Qualtrough is also working cross-governmental to see how we can help more people that have disabilities.
Thank you. Now I'll go back to some of the questions we submitted in advance. And I have to say, just today, this question has come up a few times from our members, and a lot within the BC Chamber network. We had a call earlier today. So we're hearing more and more from employers that they have some part-time workers that do not want to return to work because it makes more financial sense for them to use the CERB program. And we've heard this specifically in the restaurant field. Is the government considering any assistance, any moves to motivate part-time employees to return to work?
So I'll start with a statement. So no Canadian should have to choose between protecting their health, putting food on the table, paying for their medication, or caring for a family member. And we are really stepping up to better support those who need help but don't qualify for the CERB, and Canadians working in essential jobs. Now, to help more Canadians benefit from the CERB, the government will be changing the eligibility rules, as we announced, to allow people to earn up to $1,000 per month while collecting the CERB. We also will extend the CERB to seasonal workers who have exhausted their EI regular benefits and are unable to undertake their usual seasonal work as a result of the COVID outbreak, and also extend the CERB to workers who recently exhausted their EI benefits and are unable to find a job or return to work. Now, we are also working with provinces and territories to help provide a temporary top-up to the salaries of workers deemed essential in the fight against COVID that makes less than $2,500 a month. And the top-up is in recognition that these essential workers' salaries are often less or similar than what they would receive from the CERB. And we will continue to look for ways to better help Canadians during, of course, this difficult time. And we are working really hard to see how we can continue to support them.
Thank you, Minister. Now we have another question. This is from Curtis Hale of Ellis Dawn Construction. And he's on the call today and he's asked, is there a plan to push any funding to infrastructure or other government projects as we come out of the pandemic to assist in stimulating the economy?
Great question. As you know, in 2008, 2009, infrastructure was part of a solution. And also when our government was elected in 2015, we really pushed on infrastructure projects. So we know that it works to stimulate the economy. Now, have we decided to move on this at this time? It is a solution on the table, but we are not going to make that decision before we finish being in that stage, as I was saying earlier, of the emergency response. But I believe that we need to start to look at what will be the possibilities, and infrastructure could be one of the solutions to start in the recovery process. So thank you for sending that that example and that possibility. We will, of course, continue to have it on our table. And when I can have a direct response on if we are going to move forward, you will be the first to know.
Awesome. And I know this is your first Richmond Chamber event, but as our members will know, you can't come to a Richmond Chamber event without mention of the George Massey Corridor. So we have a major project in the works to replace the George Massey Tunnel. So we've got a major infrastructure project ready when you've got the dollars, and we can't wait to replace that corridor. So
I heard you
look
loud.
forward to working with you.
Shovel-ready project already on the table.
It's pretty close to shovel ready, so we'll be talking soon on that one. So I have another question from one of our participants today, and I've heard this from a number of other businesses, so it's a great question. SMEs also deal with credit unions and not just the big banks, but a lot of credit unions are still waiting to be accredited so that they can start looking after their customers who need these government loans. Can the process for accreditation of credit unions be sped up to allow them to start delivering these loans faster?
Well, thank you for that question. And we believe that credit unions have an essential role in delivering those services. And we have been accrediting credit unions for the past more than 2 weeks now for certain of our of our emergency response programs, and we will continue to do that. I'm not exactly sure where we are at this time with those that have applied, but I will go back and I will try to remind and see if there will be a possibility to increase those credit unions to be able to service and help businesses.
Okay, thank you. Now, folks, we're just about 10 minutes left to 5 o'clock here. I have 2 more questions on my list, and I'm estimating we probably got time for 3 or 4 total, and then we're going to wrap it up. So if anyone on the line, we've still got about 50 of us, has a question, the next 2 that come in, we're going to do our best to get those in. And yeah, it's your 10-minute warning. So,
and may I say, if you don't mind monitoring, if ever there are questions that I don't answer this evening, please don't hesitate to send them, because we really want to make sure that we respond to your questions.
Deal. So the first 2 will get asked. The rest will all be in an email that we're going to forward to the minister as soon as we're done this call at 5:01. And then it's happy hour in the Pitcairn household. Next question. So this, as you know, Minister, this pandemic is testing governments and societies around the world. Nobody's immune from the crisis at hand. We see how every different government is facing the challenges at hand. You know, we know that before this crisis, our economy was strong, but household debt levels were concerning for Canadians coast to coast. And we know this is relevant to your portfolio as you're overseeing the middle class. And just wondering how post-crisis, how do we address the situation that many Canadian households are going to be facing? And how do we address the situation as a nation with unprecedented debt being taken on for good measure, supporting Canadians and businesses that need it now? But once we get through this, the world's going to look a lot different. There's going to be debt levels like we haven't seen in a generation. And, you know, what is the government's plan as we enter, hopefully soon, the recovery phase?
Well, again, as you know, the Government of Canada is taking significant and really decisive action to support Canadians and businesses facing the hardship as a result of the COVID-19 global pandemic. No Canadian should have to choose between protecting their health, putting food on the table, paying for the medication, or even caring for a family member. So our government is working to get that money in the pockets of Canadians and workers as quickly as possible through many measures, as I shared tonight, the Canada Emergency Benefit, temporary salary top-up for low-income essential workers, an extra $300 per child through the Canada Child Benefit payment in May, special goods and services tax credit payment for low and modest income families, extra time to file income tax returns and make payments without incurring interest or penalties. And we also have mortgage support. And by getting Canadians to help they need to get through this crisis, we are really helping to ensure that Canada comes back stronger than ever. Now, there are significant investments, and fortunately, Canada has one of the best balance sheets in the G7. So our strong fiscal position means that we will have ample capacity and are well positioned to support Canadians and the Canadian economy through this COVID crisis. Now, this is just the beginning, and we will continue to do whatever it takes to support Canadians and the economy during and after this unprecedented global pandemic to ensure that our economic recovery is inclusive, sustainable, and builds prosperity for all Canadians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you. Now, I think I have our final question from participants today, and then I'll end with one of my own. And, you know, Minister, you mentioned this earlier, talking about the recovery, and, you know, right now we're focused on the day-to-day and getting through this, but soon, hopefully we will see a return to whatever the new normal looks like. And, you know, I have Lulu on the call asking, you know, when it will be possible to resume. And I know, as you mentioned, we don't have those answers, but I'm wondering, when we do get to a point where we can start unwinding this and we can start getting back to normal, what is the role of the federal government going to be in relation to the provincial role of getting back to normal? I mean, is each province going to be responsible for handling their own transition and recovery plans? Will there be federal guidelines? So not a question more of when, but how, you know, will that recovery be structured in a provincial federal government relation aspect?
Well, thank you for that. And again, as I said, it's unclear at this time, where we're going to be in 6 months from now and a year from now. But we do know, and we have had pretty much, I would say, important experience in the past 6 weeks of seeing how provinces, territories, and the Canadian government has been working together collaboratively to try to identify how best to support Canadians and workers during the emergency crisis. I believe we should take that foundation and continue to work together to make sure that we all have a role and we all make sure that we focus on what will be needed depending on where you live across the country, and to see how we will put those pieces together for the recovery. So I'm hopeful that we will be also very creative, very innovative. We've seen what we've done in the past 6 weeks just with the Team Canada approach and also with the Made in Canada approach. I have been amazed to see how many businesses have turned around their products or services delivery to try to respond to the COVID. So we know we have very innovative business and workers across the country, and I believe that's a foundation we should be continuing on when we go to recovery.
Well, Minister, I have one more question. As moderator, I'm going to reserve that right. I see a few more questions that just came in. I promise, folks, we will copy and paste and pass all those questions on to the Minister's staff and promise to get back to you with an answer. But for the last question, on a lighter note, there's no right or wrong answer. But I know it's something we're all thinking about, especially myself, I know. More and more people are starting to talk about the new normal. They say we're never going back to how life was in December. There's going to be new normal as we get out of this and back to life as we knew it. And I think it's becoming more and more accepted by people of, what this new normal is going to be, and that it's just the reality we must accept. So in your opinion, from what you're seeing in your day-to-day travels, what do you believe are going to be some of the long-lasting impacts that this pandemic is going to have on our society?
Well, I will tell you, Matt, if I had a crystal ball and I could see what would happen, I would love to tell everyone. But unfortunately, I can't predict the future at this time. And what I know is that in different countries around the world, including Canada, this crisis has really highlighted some key issues that all level governments need to carefully examine together. And I'm talking about how we care for the elderly, the value of a strong, well-resourced, and universally accessible healthcare system, the important role of schools, caregivers in our society, the structure of our social welfare systems, and how we support the most vulnerable, how we construct and manage our supply chains, and the overall value we place on well-being and quality of life, in addition to the more traditional aspects of economic growth. Now, I just want to share that in my mandate from the Prime Minister, I have been looking at incorporating quality of life measures and well-being into our government's decision-making and budgeting processes. And it strikes me as more important than ever to move forward with this. Now, we know that quality of life and well-being are important to all Canadians, and I believe it's essential to focus on ensuring that our future growth improves lives and generates prosperity for all Canadians. And as we come out of this crisis, we will need to lay the foundation for well-being and prosperity for all Canadians, as I said earlier, in an inclusive, sustainable, and resilient way. So I'm really hopeful that we will be able to also all work together to make sure that Canada can prosper.
Well, thank you. I know if I was to share my one big takeaway, it's this working from home, what we're all doing today. I think, definitely, I believe in our operation, in my personal life, this is one of the big takeaways, whether it's Zoom or WebEx or, whichever platform. But I think if anything good comes out of this, which there will be some, you never waste a good crisis. One thing is it's shown, I know my operation, our operation, and many of the folks here that you can work from home. And I know for that one day I have to go into work a week or 2 days, the traffic and the commute's been fantastic. So, getting more people working from home, spending time with their family, less time in their car, I think that's one of the positive takeaways I've seen. And it'd be great to explore ways that government can support that and be part of this larger transition that's good for people, good for the environment. So we're trying to find those good things everywhere we can, and keep those long-lasting changes that we want, and not so much of those ones that we don't want. So,
Well,
Minister,
if I may just add a little thing, I think that we also are being tested with our mental health in this
mhm.
very difficult time, and we will have to find ways to support Canadians and making sure that our mental health is taken care of, and we find those solutions. I find sometimes it can be very frustrating for many of us not being able to go to our normal routine. So the mental health aspect is important. And I look at my kids, they're adapting on this real new normal, and the learning opportunity that we have is really important. So I just wanted to share that also.
No, I'm glad you did, Minister. And it's so true. You know, we hosted 2 events today. We're part of this event, of course. We had a session earlier today regarding mental health. It is critical. Now, before I wrap it up, Minister, I'd love to give you a minute to closing remarks or anything that hasn't been said that you'd like to reiterate. Time is yours to wrap it up.
Well, I just want to thank you all again for contributing to these solutions that we're finding. I mean, our government, yes, we've been really laying out these economic response plan, but if it wouldn't be by the work of Canadians sending us really what they needed, we wouldn't be able to be where we are. And I believe that's the partnership that we need to continue on. And I'm hopeful that we will continue this dialogue, and hopefully maybe in a couple of weeks from now, we can do this again and either look at the new challenges or even see how we can build our next phase in our recovery at this time. And I would really love to be able to work with you again.
Yeah, no, thank you, Minister. And, I hope this is the first of many conversations. Your portfolio is incredibly relevant to the recovery and the road ahead. And, I look forward to the day that we can host you in person without any fear of, the pandemic. But yeah, we do truly appreciate your time today and taking the time to answer the questions. We'll send you those other questions that we didn't have an opportunity to ask. And we will definitely take you up on hosting another session like today. And next year, we'll get you in person in Richmond Hotel Ballroom here, and we'll talk face to face. So thank you so much on behalf of the Chamber, our board, our staff, and all of our members here on the call today. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
And a big thank you to the Port of Vancouver for supporting events like this and the many other events that we host at the Chamber on a regular basis. So at that, I see 5 o'clock. I'm going to let you all go. Have a wonderful evening. Minister, you're a bit ahead of us. And we'll see all of you members and friends again soon. Thank you.
Stay healthy, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.